For years, Ronnie Coleman was the definition of invincible, a man who defied logic, broke bones and barriers, and smiled through pain most of us couldn't even imagine. He was the king of bodybuilding, the 8-time Mr. Olympia whose strength felt almost supernatural. Every rep, every roar of "yeah buddy" became a war cry that echoed through iron jungles around the world. But behind the screams and smiles, there was another side, one hidden beneath layers of muscle, pride and silence. The pain, the pressure, the private battles he never spoke about. The truth that greatness has a cost, and Ronnie paid every bit of it. Now at 61, the man once crowned the strongest on earth sits in a wheelchair, not defeated, but finally ready to tell the world what really happened. The injuries, the decisions, the regrets, and the revelation that shocked even his biggest fans. This isn't a story of pity. It's a story of power, the kind that comes when a man turns his pain into purpose. But to understand what he's finally revealing now, we have to go back before the fame, before the pain, before the legend of Ronnie Coleman began, before the world knew him as the king. Ronnie Coleman was just a kid from Monroe, Louisiana, a place where dreams came second to survival. Born in 1964, he grew up in a modest home where money was tight and nothing came easy. His mother worked tirelessly to provide for the family, teaching Ronnie the value of discipline long before he ever touched a barbell. Unlike many future athletes, Ronnie's first victories weren't won on a stage. They were earned through sweat, school, and stubborn determination. He wasn't just strong in the gym, he was sharp in the classroom. At Grambling State University, he majored in accounting and graduated cum laude, a distinction that spoke to his focus and drive. But even with a degree, the real world didn't hand him opportunities. Job after job turned him down, and the man who would one day be worshipped for his strength ended up working at Domino's Pizza, delivering boxes of dough just to get by. When life closed one door, fate cracked open another. In search of something better, Ronnie applied for the Arlington Police Department. Not exactly the glamorous path to bodybuilding immortality, but that badge gave him structure, purpose, and the chance to stay disciplined while chasing a paycheck. It was in those long shifts and weight room breaks at the station that something started to change. Then came the moment that changed everything. One day, Ronnie walked into Metroflex Gym, a hardcore warehouse in Texas where sweat hit the floor harder than the weights. The owner, Brian Dobson, saw potential in the young officer. He offered Ronnie a deal, free lifetime membership, but only if he agreed to compete in a bodybuilding show. Ronnie hesitated, but the challenge lit a spark that would soon burn into obsession. That decision, that simple yes, would rewrite bodybuilding history. From that day, the humble cop became a man possessed. The same hands that wrote police reports would soon lift unimaginable weight. Nobody in that small Texas gym knew they were looking at the man who'd soon redefine human limits. When Ronnie Coleman first stepped onto a bodybuilding stage, it was like watching a storm roll in, raw, untamed, and impossible to ignore. The crowd didn't quite understand what they were seeing. His muscles looked otherworldly. His frame was thicker than anyone in the lineup. And his presence, it didn't just fill the stage, it dominated it. His rise wasn't handed to him. It was earned through years of punishment disguised as training. After that first amateur victory, Ronnie kept pushing forward, stacking trophies until he earned his IFBB Pro card in 1991, the key to competing among the best in the world. But once he arrived, the world didn't welcome him with open arms. He placed low in early contests. The judges muttered words that cut deep. Too big, too raw, too blocky. In an era obsessed with symmetry and finesse, Ronnie was chaos, pure, unrestrained power. But if bodybuilding was art, Ronnie Coleman was painting with dynamite. He didn't train for applause or trophies. He trained because he couldn't stop. His mornings started before the sun even dared to rise. 5 a.m. squats, 6 monstrous meals a day, 2 or 3 training sessions, and almost no rest. He worked full-time as a police officer while still grinding in the gym, sometimes training right after a long patrol shift. His coworkers would joke that he was built like a tank. What they didn't realize was that he trained like one too. His philosophy was simple, brutal, and honest. Pain equals progress. If it didn't hurt, it didn't count. Every scream, every drop of sweat, every ache in his joints, it was all proof that he was getting closer to perfection. To Ronnie, pain wasn't the enemy, it was a teacher. And in the middle of that pain, a legend was born. Those now famous words, "yeah buddy" and "lightweight baby," weren't just catchphrases. They were declarations of war. Every time he yelled them, it was like flipping a switch. The gym turned into a battlefield, and the weights were his opponents. His grin before a heavy set wasn't arrogance, it was faith. Faith in his preparation. Faith that no matter how heavy the bar, he could move it. Then came the moments that made him immortal. 800-pound squats, 800-pound deadlifts, 2,300 calories in one sitting, and veins so thick they looked carved from granite. Cameras captured his insanity, and soon fans couldn't look away. YouTube clips of him screaming his way through impossible lifts became viral long before viral was even a thing. But what those clips didn't show were the nights that followed. The ice baths that couldn't dull the pain, the aches that kept him awake, the hunger that never stopped. Ronnie's life was built on a cycle of eat, lift, suffer, repeat. And through it all, he never slowed down. While other competitors trained smart, Ronnie trained harder. While others worried about overtraining, he worried about not training enough. That mindset, the refusal to take shortcuts, became both his greatest gift and his greatest curse. To the fans, he was untouchable, a god carved in muscle and sweat. To his peers, he was the man no one could beat, because he was willing to go where no sane person would. He wasn't just strong, he was possessed. But behind the screaming and the spectacle was a reality no one wanted to face. The body that defied physics was starting to rebel. His joints ached, his back screamed. Every lift left a mark, invisible to the cameras but permanent beneath the skin. Fans saw strength. They saw glory. They saw the man who made 800 pounds look like air. But what they didn't see was the cost. Because behind every "yeah, buddy" was a body beginning to crack, slowly, silently, under the weight of greatness. From 1998 to 2005, Ronnie Coleman didn't just dominate bodybuilding, he defined it. In an era of giants, he was the undisputed king. His physique wasn't human, it was something else entirely. He ushered in what fans now call the mass monster era, a time when sheer size and density reigned supreme. Every time he walked on stage, the crowd knew what was coming. The roar, the flex, the impossible proportions. He stood next to legends like Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, and Jay Cutler, and somehow made them all look small. His presence wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Competitors admitted they lost before they even stepped under the lights, because they knew there was no beating Ronnie Coleman at his peak. Year after year, the streak continued. 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles, each one more dominant than the last. His back looked like armor, his legs like marble pillars, his strength beyond comprehension. Fans worshipped him. The media called him a genetic miracle. But Ronnie knew it wasn't just genetics. It was grind, grit, and an almost inhuman tolerance for pain. Behind the glory, though, the cracks were forming. The same weights that made him a legend were slowly destroying him from the inside out. The 800-pound squats, the 700-pound deadlifts, all those superhuman feats came at a price. His spine began to give way under the pressure. Discs herniated, nerves were pinched, joints screamed in protest. But Ronnie didn't stop. He couldn't. The pain was constant, yet he hid it behind that infectious grin. He'd limp into the gym, take a deep breath, and push through another brutal session as if nothing was wrong. When the agony got unbearable, he turned to cortisone shots just to dull the fire long enough to compete. He delayed surgeries, ignored doctors, and refused to rest, because in Ronnie's world, rest was weakness. This was the psychology of greatness, an obsession that bordered on madness. He had to outwork everyone, even when his body begged for mercy. He often said, "If I can walk, I can train." And he meant it. Pain wasn't a warning sign for Ronnie, it was a challenge. Through it all, he leaned on 2 things, faith and focus. His belief in God, his mental conditioning, and his unshakable discipline kept him standing when most men would have fallen apart. The gym was his church, and lifting was his prayer. But the price of perfection was steep. Fans saw the trophies, the smiles, the roaring crowds. His family saw the scars, the nights he couldn't move, the pain he tried to laugh off, the toll hidden beneath the muscle. And then, everything he'd built started to fall apart. When Ronnie Coleman stepped off the Olympia stage for the last time in 2007, the applause faded, but the pain didn't. The man who once carried 800 pounds on his back now struggled just to stand. The same body that once looked indestructible was quietly falling apart. Over the next few years, Ronnie's life became a revolving door of surgeries and recoveries. 13 in total, 2 hip replacements, fused vertebrae, and metal rods and screws running through his spine. Hospitals replaced gyms, and operating tables became his new battleground. Each procedure promised relief, yet somehow left him in even more pain. Still, every time the doctors warned him, Ronnie would shrug and smile, repeating the line that summed up his unbreakable spirit, "I'd do it all again." Those words weren't bravado, they were conviction. To Ronnie, greatness was worth every scar. But behind that stubborn pride was a man quietly suffering through nights that never seemed to end. The simplest movements became battles. Standing was a challenge. Walking was a victory. The bills piled up. The painkillers stopped working. There were moments when even the strongest man in the world felt completely powerless. In interviews, he admitted that the hardest part wasn't the surgeries, it was losing his independence. The man who once bent iron now had to lean on others just to get out of bed. Yet even in his darkest hours, Ronnie refused to give in. Faith became his anchor. When his body failed him, his belief in God and in himself carried him through. He saw every setback as a test of endurance, a spiritual continuation of the discipline that had once built his body. By his side through much of this storm was his wife Susan, and later his partner, a personal trainer who understood the kind of pain that came with chasing perfection. They stood by him during hospital stays, therapy sessions, and long, quiet nights filled with doubt. Ronnie Coleman, once the strongest man alive, had been brought to his knees but not defeated. His muscles had withered, yet his will remained untouched. But it wasn't just his body breaking, it was the illusion of invincibility. At 61, Ronnie Coleman finally said the words his fans had feared, and deep down, always suspected. The man who once squatted 800 pounds with a grin had to accept that he may never walk unaided again. Years of surgeries, fractures, and relentless strain had left his spine permanently damaged. Doctors told him the truth long ago. He just refused to listen. In a voice softened by age but still unshaken by defeat, Ronnie confessed that he ignored every warning he'd ever been given. When doctors told him to rest, he trained harder. When pain screamed at him to stop, he pushed past it. I was too stubborn, he admitted. I thought I could beat the pain the same way I beat every lift. But this time, the iron didn't bend. He did. He opened up about the toll his choices took on his body, from overtraining to the use of performance-enhancing substances that fueled his legendary size. He didn't hide from it, nor did he make excuses. He refused to play the victim. To him, every decision, every injection, every extra rep, every night of agony was part of the price. And in one emotional interview, he said the line that silenced the room. I paid the price for greatness, and I knew it. In 2025, that price nearly cost him everything. Ronnie was rushed into emergency surgery after developing a life-threatening bloodstream infection. The news sent shockwaves through the bodybuilding world. Fans feared the worst. But once again, against all odds, he fought his way back. Weeks later, he appeared online. Thinner, weaker, but still smiling. The caption beneath his photo said it all. Still blessed. That moment became his quiet revelation. There was no scandal, no secret betrayal hiding in the shadows. Just truth. The truth that the strongest man in the world had given everything. His body, his comfort, his mobility for the dream of being the best. And he had no regrets. He wasn't hiding a scandal. He was hiding the truth that greatness demands a price no one else would pay. But that revelation opened the door to questions nobody dared ask. What we all suspected: steroids, stubbornness, and secrets. For years, fans whispered about it. The impossible strength, the freakish muscle mass, the superhuman endurance. They said no man could achieve what Ronnie Coleman did without help. And as time passed, those whispers turned into speculation, and speculation became assumption. Eventually, Ronnie stopped dodging the question. In a rare moment of candor, he confirmed what most already suspected. Yes, he had used gear, but always under medical supervision. No shame, no hesitation, just honesty. Everybody at that level was doing something. He said, I just made sure I did it smart. It wasn't a confession meant to shock. It was a reality check from a man who'd lived on the edge of human possibility. But while some fans applauded his honesty, others were stunned. For them, Ronnie had always seemed like the exception, the one man who'd done it purely on willpower and genetics. The truth blurred that line. Yet, even in his openness, he refused to blame steroids for his suffering. It wasn't the gear that broke me, he said. It was me, because I never stopped. That's where the real revelation lay. Not in drugs, but in drive. Ronnie wasn't addicted to substances. He was addicted to intensity. The rush of conquering the impossible. The euphoria of defying pain. Even now, years later, confined to a wheelchair, he admits, if I could walk, I'd still be lifting. But that mindset came with a cost no one could see. Beneath the metals and muscle was a quieter pain. The loss of time. The distance from loved ones. The loneliness that follows anyone who devotes everything to a dream. Training consumed him. Family dinners turned into late-night meals between workouts. Vacations were replaced by gym sessions. The stage gave him glory, but it also took pieces of him he could never get back. He gave the world a godlike physique and lost almost everything human in return. And yet, this isn't a tragedy. It's something deeper. Today, Ronnie Coleman's life looks very different from the one he once lived under the bright lights of the Olympia stage. The roaring crowds are gone. The heavy plates have been replaced by rehab bands and cautious movements, but in their place stands something greater: peace. He's now married to Susan Williamson, a retired personal trainer who knows the cost of chasing perfection. Together, they've built a quiet life focused on family and healing, raising their children with the same discipline and faith that once fueled Ronnie's career. The house may echo with laughter instead of iron, but the lessons of the gym still live in everything he does. Instead of competing, Ronnie now builds. His company, the Ronnie Coleman Signature Series, became a global success, a line of supplements born not just from science but from experience. The same work ethic that shaped his body now drives his business. And while he can no longer move the weights that once made him a legend, he still trains in his own way. Short sessions, careful movements, and an unbreakable mindset that refuses to surrender. He often says that his days begin not with pain but with gratitude. Every morning I wake up, I thank God I'm still here, he shared in an interview. Faith, which once gave him strength to lift, now gives him strength to endure. His mental toughness remains his greatest muscle. And while his body may be limited, his purpose has never been clearer. Ronnie travels, gives talks, and connects with millions through his YouTube channel, where fans still hear that unmistakable voice, softer now, but no less powerful. His message has changed, but its impact hasn't. If I can smile through pain, he tells his audience, what's your excuse? In every story, every laugh, every flash of that familiar grin, you can feel the truth. The strength that made him a legend was never in his muscles, it was in his refusal to quit. And as the world finally understands the man behind the muscles, from the dust of humble beginnings to the blinding lights of bodybuilding's biggest stage, Ronnie Coleman's life reads like a modern epic, one of rise, glory, collapse, revelation, and rebirth. He became more than just a champion. He became a symbol of what's possible when discipline and desire meet absolute belief. His legacy stretches far beyond the 8 Sandow trophies that bear his name. He inspired an entire generation of bodybuilders, athletes, and ordinary people to dream bigger, work harder, and push past limits they never thought they could reach. Even now, decades after his prime, young lifters still shout his phrases, "Yeah, buddy, lightweight baby," as if channeling the spirit of a man who turned pain into power. But Ronnie's story isn't just about muscle and medals, it's about the cost of greatness and the strength it takes to live with that cost. He showed the world that true strength isn't measured in pounds lifted or titles won, but in the spirit that refuses to break even when everything else does. And yet one question still lingers: was it worth it? Would you trade your body for immortality? Would you give up comfort, movement, even health to be remembered forever? It's a question only Ronnie can answer, and one that every dreamer must face. Maybe that's why his story resonates so deeply. Because we all chase something, a goal, a title, a legacy, but few are willing to give everything for it. Ronnie did. He can't walk like he used to, but he still stands taller than anyone who ever doubted him. And in that truth lies the real message. The king of bodybuilding may have lost his crown of muscle, but his spirit still wears something greater, the crown of resilience.